Hi, I'm Duncan Chillen. I'm here to talk to you today about metacognition and rational thought, which I consider to be two key tools in education. First of all, we should probably start off with what actually is metacognition, because it sounds like a bit of a weird concept and it's probably not one that many of you have heard of. And metacognition is essentially an idea and a concept that was first thought up in 1970s by a guy called John Flavel. What he was investigating was why are some people better at solving puzzles than other people? Essentially, some people just seem to be better at it than others, and he decided to research in this area. And he basically found through his research that some people can observe their own thoughts. Some people are better at the skill of being able to think about thinking. And so this generates a whole new kind of spectrum of thought for a person to be able to kind of think, because they can kind of use this to analyze what they're thinking and realize when their thoughts are going in the wrong direction. So, for example, one of the kind of rationality questions that have been put forward in this area is that of Jack, Mary, and George. So Jack is looking at Mary, Mary is looking at George. Jack is married and George is unmarried. Okay, so in this situation, can any of you tell me if a married person is looking at an unmarried person? Anyone? Anyone? Because basically, yes, no, or can't be decided. Who said yes? Why do you think yes?
I read a blog on it yesterday.
Ah, well, okay, well that doesn't count. Anyone who hasn't read a blog on it yesterday? No? It can't be decided? Exactly. Well, most people actually think that, no, you can't determine this because you need to find out whether or not Mary is married before you can determine this. However, it doesn't actually matter in this case, because if Mary is married, then she's looking at George. And so married person is looking at an unmarried person. And if she is unmarried, then that means that Jack is looking at Mary, so a married person is still looking at an unmarried person. It's yes in both situations, but people don't think about this because they kind of go round the loop of, well, we need to know if Mary's married before we can determine if this statement is true or not. And so this then leads to, that's just one example, there are many of them, but this basically leads to the whole idea of rational thought. I'm going wrong in this situation, I'm not thinking about it in more than one way. Why am I not doing that? That's something that a metacognitive person should be able to think about and should be able to think to themselves. And so the two studies at the bottom here are ones that also link very quite key in linking that kind of ability to observe and comment upon your own thought. And they say this also leads to critical thinking of your own thoughts and then logical thinking. And this has many applications in psychology, but obviously here we are here to talk about its uses within education. And so logical thinking, as created by metacognition, which is one of the key things you need before you can think logically about your own thought, will basically show you what you know and what you don't know. It is the knowing of knowing. It's that you can take a topic and say, so a subject has 5 topics, and you can take them one by one and say, yes, I know this, or no, I don't. If you have that ability, you can then say, right, I know these 3 topics pretty well. I will just, go over them every now and again, but ultimately, I know them, it's all okay. These next 2 topics, however, I don't know them so well. So now, this is where I'm going to focus my learning, and that really stops you from getting in a repetitive loop of going over what you already know, because this is something the research has found, is that essentially, if you don't think about your own thought, you will if you don't metacognate, which is a great word, then you will basically end up in that loop of, oh, I know this subject really well, I'll go over this thing again and again and again, and you just don't learn other areas. You can't focus on those other areas. And so now with this, you can go onto the areas that you don't know, and that will, in exams and for university, for learning, for not just even in education, in higher education, you can use it all over your life to be able to focus on areas you don't know and bring them up to a higher standard. So then you then also have the ability to integrate that knowledge that you've just picked up and then bring it into what you already know as well. No single piece of information will ever stand alone. That's just how our minds work. You will never have just one fact that is completely unrelated to everything you've ever known. That's just impossible. And so you can then kind of bring in what you've just learned into this huge spider diagram that is your mind, and this will really show to you the intricacies of a subject, because you will realize links that you might never have made before, because you can really think about how what you've just learned works with what you already know. And this is incredibly useful, the fact that it will go on to be able to teach you self-regulated learning. And self-regulated learning is something we hear about a lot. In university, we are expected to do a lot of it. We are supposed to be doing a 40-hour week, of which we have probably about 8, no, not even probably about, roughly 8, I'll say, for now, hours of actual contact time. So it's 32 hours that we need to make up by ourselves. And self-regulated learning is both an understanding as well as a level of control over your own learning environment. It's the decision. It's a decision of how to study and what to study. And if you have the understanding but not the control, or the control but not the understanding, then it will not work that well. And so you can also decide how to learn effectively, and you can learn at your own pace. Whilst metacognition is very useful in kind of Vygotsky's kind of child development and the kind of zone of proximal development that he came up with, this is obviously a bigger focus on higher education, and so it assumes that, yeah, as a learner, you can identify with logical thought that has occurred due to metacognition, how you learn best, and you will be able to think logically about the best way to approach situations. And so you are picking up information at a much faster pace because of this, essentially. And so metacognition is a high level of control over your own thought. The knowing of knowing is something that comes up a lot in this, and it's something that's quite difficult to kind of give to people, because it's quite a strange feeling. It's the fact that you can, as with SAFMED cards, you can pick up a SAFMED card and you can know in your mind, yes, I know what's on the other side of this, or no, I do not know what's on the other side of this. You will be able to say, this is, the answer to whatever's on this piece of paper is this, or nope, got no idea, I'm going to have to wing this. And so, obviously, when you do SAFMED cards, you'll pick them up, you'll do them, and then you'll have 2 big piles at the end. You'll have the stuff you know and the stuff you don't know. And essentially, metacognition is that in your own mind. It's you being able to do that without having to, being able to do that almost automatically on a daily basis as you're learning. And so, yeah, it's a high level of control over your own thought, which leads you to, in education, being able to choose what to study, how to study. And this level of metacognition leads to rationality, and this is one of those great snowball things, in that once you start metacognating, you, again, a great word, you start thinking critically about your own thoughts, because you can determine what's good, what's bad, what not to think, but how to improve what you are thinking already. And then that leads to critical analysis. So the critical analysis of your own thought leads to rationality. Rationality then leads to logical thought, which is, for education, an incredibly good tool, especially when done on your own mind. So it gives you a very deep understanding of your own subject, or whatever you are trying to learn. Thank you, and there are any questions?